Hello everyone and welcome to today's presentation. Thanks for coming. My name is Les Burnham, I'm CEO of Stilo, and I'll be presenting today with Helen St, our Conversion Services Manager. And between us we'll be, talking for the best part of an hour. We hope to be able to leave 5 or 10 minutes for questions at the end. But let me first of all go through some housekeeping points. So, all attendees will be muted for the duration of the webinar, but if you do have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A panel in the meeting window, and we'll, as I say, look to address them at the end of this session. If you do have any experience with technical difficulties, audio problems, whatever, then please send a chat to Helen Owens-Pope, who will try to help you out. And also, just to mention, we'll be running a survey at the end of the session to gather feedback on the webinar, and would appreciate it if you could just take a couple of minutes to complete that. It's always very useful for us. And just to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll email a link to you afterwards, probably within 24 hours, all being well. So we'll just press on. For those of you who don't know Stilo already, we're a public company. We're listed on the London Stock Exchange, and we specialize in XML, SGML conversion authoring solutions and tools. So some of you may know us as being the developers on OmniMark, which was first developed more than 20 years ago and is used to develop XML and SGML content processing applications. Following on from that, we developed Migrate, well, I guess probably about 7 years ago now, which is our cloud XML content conversion service, which we'll be talking about today. And then recently we've just announced AuthorBridge, which is a web-based XML editing tool for SMEs, subject matter experts. We've been developing that with IBM. But as I said, today we'll be talking about Migrate, our cloud conversion service. It's been used by an awful lot of customers over the last 6-7 years or so, and we've helped convert more than 1 million pages of content to DITA. Today we'll be talking about, we'll be showing you a demo of converting a FrameMaker document to DITA. Yeah, hopefully all being well, that should take us through to the top of the hour. So just before we start, I'd just like to say that before even considering your best approach or for you in terms of converting your content, there are a few things that should be in place. You should have decided upon your content strategy and your data information model. Your publishing processes should be in place. You don't necessarily need to have a CCMS, but typically our customers do. Your authors generally understand DITA. You know how much content you want to convert and when, and you have a good appreciation of your consistency and quality of your legacy content. That's not always actually easy to ascertain. You typically sort of discover this as you go along. But these are the sorts of things that should ideally be in place before you begin to convert your content. And then, just to mention that, really, and just state that conversion to DITA isn't necessarily, I mean, it can be straightforward, but generally it isn't. In any conversion project, for those of you who haven't been involved in converting content before, should be aware that there's typically 3 phases. There's a pre-conversion prep, when you're preparing your content before it's actually converted. Then, once it's been converted, then there's a post-conversion cleanup and a QA procedure that you need to go through. So the point here is that depending upon how good your conversion technology is, it can really influence the amount of pre-conversion prep you need to undertake or the amount of post-conversion cleanup you need to undertake. And I'll come on to that later in the session. And also to make the point that as an authoring team, even if you're going sort of taking an outsourced route, or you take this sort of conversion, the route that we'll show you with Migrate today, you're always involved at each step of the way. So there's no way you can just push this off and think someone else is going to do it completely. You are actually always going to be involved. So you get involved in actually sort of helping with the conversion rule specification in the first place. You need to understand, as I mentioned earlier, the complexities in your source content as best you can. You need to determine any data specializations that you might be implementing, and then find your way through this to then basically determine how best to prepare your content for the particular conversion you need to do, and how much post-conversion cleanup may be involved. So just looking at the different routes or different approaches you can take typically to conversion, there's, I would say, three general approaches. One is in-house, one is outsourced, and then the other is using sort of the Migrate cloud service. So they're all quite different in their own way, and they all work in their own way as well. And there are pluses and minuses, pros and cons associated with each of them. Now, if we look at sort of taking in-house route, it's typically sort of, profiled by having sort of quite a minimal budget in place. You'll have somebody in-house typically who has got some time on their hands and is tech savvy enough to be able to write their own conversion scripts or use third-party software tools that might be out there. But you do your own cleanup, you do your own QA. Typically in this situation, a lot of cutting and pasting might be involved. That in itself can actually lead to, I guess, that's quite error-prone when you're cutting and pasting. But you'll typically do this ad hoc as time allows. Low volumes generally. Doesn't scale well as a solution, but it's a pretty good learning exercise. You do get to learn an awful lot about your own content when you do this. And we have a lot of customers that come to us having gone through this particular path, and we find that it's no bad thing at all to be able to get to know your content in this way. So it's interesting route, but as I say, generally not scalable. Then there's looking at sort of outsourced solutions and what I would call traditional outsourced solutions, where it's typified really by sort of high volume content, maybe pretty labor intensive with those pre-conversion prep and cleanup sort of phases to be done. And then also it's run really sort of strictly project managed according to strict deadlines, typically. So you have limited internal resources. There's obviously needs to be a budget available for this. You sit down, agree a conversion spec with a partner. Your partner writes the conversion scripts. He manages the project, the conversion, maybe uses offshore resources, and then you undertake the pre-conversion prep. That's been agreed upon. You need to batch the documents for conversion. You give them to your partner, and there's essentially often at that point a content freeze until you get those results back again. The partner then undertakes the post-conversion cleanup for you, and so do you. You're involved in the Q&A process. So the partner's queuing these results, and then you notify the partner of any required changes, and the loops, basically you're into this loop, this iterative loop of going back and forth. And we call this churn really. And this can be really frustrating for anyone involved. You might have a small tweak you want to make to rules or a small change you want to make. And when you're outsourcing, it can really take some time just to turn around the smallest change. And we recognize this as being sort of typical of outsourcing conversion solutions when we introduced the Migrate cloud service, and we felt it would help to basically be used to be overcome these frustrations and the problems that you typically face in outsourced projects. So what's Migrate? Well, basically it's a cloud service. It can be actually implemented on-premise as well, but let me just talk about the way it works. When we provide our customers with a conversion portal, we actually configure a dedicated portal for them. So we take sample files, we apply some initial sort of configuration rules. We can tailor it to basically DITA 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, or include specializations if needs be. And then we can set this up so that you can upload different document groups if needs be, or single or multiple files. And we take content and we convert. We do a lot of work in FrameMaker and Word. We can do AuthorIt, InDesign, RoboHelp, Flare, SGML, XML files. And we can, in this case, we'll just talk you through sort of the FrameMaker conversion. And in today's presentation, we'll show you FrameMaker being converted to DITA. But we will just upload a FrameMaker file, your FrameMaker files to the portal where the files are annotated. Essentially, they're analyzed for various characteristics, much more than just styles. We look at the sort of conditional text patterns, context, that sort of thing. We'll annotate the different characteristics and map those characteristics to the target DITA. So everything will always conform to your own specific target DITA. If there are any issues to be aware of, we produce a warning report, might suggest that you need to do some cleanup here or there. And we operate, the portal operates on this pay-as-you-use system. So we have this concept of conversion credits, where one conversion credit processes 1,000 characters. And so we count the number of characters in the FrameMaker document as to be converted, and we'll tell you how much it would cost you before you start in terms of conversion credits. And then you can say yes or no to that particular charge and have your document converted. So it gets converted in real time. It's schema generated, so you'll always get valid data, and it's on demand. So 24/7 you can actually operate the portal. The nice thing about this, and this is the real differentiator I would say between this and other approaches, is that we also provide this rules editor, so you can refine your rules and tweak your rules really quite easily without needing to be a developer. So, you know, if you're in the authoring team, if you're an SME or in the authoring team, typically you can guide exceptions through. And that's really important if you've got a lot of inconsistencies in your source content, and you can modify the rules accordingly as needs be. So you can reconvert as necessary. It doesn't cost you any more to reconvert if you need to. So it's just really a matter of you deciding what sort of, when you're happy with the quality of the content you're receiving. And then you can clone and modify rule sets as needs be. And we'll show you that in the course of the demo in a few moments. So basically, this is the way in which it works. We can always sit there in the background with access to your portal and help you out if there are any particular problems or any particular difficulties. And then you can basically sort of download the content at the end of the exercise. So you get high quality data every time, as I said, valid data every time. We can configure this so you essentially can have data topics or specialized topics, data maps or book maps. We convert FrameMaker drawings to SVG automatically and equations to MathML. So that's the way that's essentially the workflow of the system. We find that most people like to have this, being able to upload and download. They don't really want to integrate this with their CCMS or publishing systems. They like to have this sort of dividing line between the conversion process and the content management and publishing processes. And this is the way it works. So a very important point to make is that the portal, well, the Migrate service has been in operation for 6-7 years now, and we've encountered all sorts of different issues, really, with the documents that we've been able to convert. And as we encounter these issues, then, you know, we essentially sort of refine the system. The system gets better and better. So it's really quite mature now in managing and converting a whole range of content, a whole range of inconsistencies, I would add as well. But we're you know, forever getting new issues coming in, new documents where, you know, we have new problems that we've never seen before, and so the service continually improves. So at this point, I think just want to make this point again, that if you've got very strong or you know, sophisticated conversion rules in place and methods in place, then this is really going to cut down on the pre-conversion prep that you need to do, or the post-conversion cleanup that you would invariably need to do. So it's very, very important that you have high levels of automation. So at this point, I'd like to ask Helen to talk about this in more detail before getting into a demonstration. So Helen, over to you.
Thanks, Les. I hope everybody can hear me all right. So this slide shows a list of a few of the things that, as we talk to people, we find that people think can't be well done through automation, but we found that they can. So one of the things that comes up very often is tables, especially tables that have complicated column spanning and row spanning. These things are very difficult to convert by hand to XML. It's time consuming, it's error prone, it's not fun, nobody likes it. Migrate will do it automatically. So if you've got column spanning and row spanning in your table as it goes in, it will come out exactly the same way as long as you don't tell it to do something different. Now the other side of the coin with tables, of course, is that in many of our input formats, tables tend to get used strictly for formatting purposes as well. And we don't want those formats in the DITA. For example, one of the most common ones is that notes will tend to be formatted inside of tables. Now, in DITA, what we want is a note element of the appropriate type. We don't want the table at all. Fortunately, we are able to identify these tables pretty easily with one or two rules and strip out all the table markup and mark up the content inside correctly. So that's another example of how tables, by and large, are not something that are going to cause us any grief, either before conversion or after. Next thing on my list, typically as we're looking at an automated conversion, an awful lot of work is going to get done by taking a paragraph style that's coming either from FrameMaker or Word or from whatever format we're talking about and mapping that directly to the appropriate element in DITA. And this is great. You can get a lot done that way. You get a huge quantity of the volume done that way, but often it's not sufficient. For example, you might have a paragraph style that's a numbered list. Now, you might use that paragraph style for making a list inside a reference topic, for example. You might use the very same paragraph style to represent steps in a task topic. So, because the conversion in Migrate is driven by the schema, Migrate is aware of where these things occur and where they're allowed. So, if Migrate comes across this particular paragraph style in a situation where a step is allowed, it'll create a step. But if it comes across it in a situation where a step is not allowed, it will automatically revert to creating a numbered list item. So we don't have to go in ahead of time and make the distinction in the input. Migrate can differentiate based on context. So the next thing on the list is related, but it has more to do with the inline elements that we come across. So in technical documentation, one of the most common things of all is the menu cascade and the UI control. Typically, we'll see these are marked up as just little bold spans inside a paragraph. And it's just typically just an overridden style. It's nothing fancy or anything. But we can pick out the fact that it's bold, and then we can look at the context surrounding it. So very often it's inside a step, so that's one of the things we can look at right away. Also, we can look at the words that come before it and after it. So if the word preceding is click, chances are it's a UI control. If the word following is window, chances are it's a win title. So we have a number of different things that we can use to help us correctly identify and correctly mark up these inline elements. Next thing is the map. So you can choose to have a book map or an ordinary DITA map. You could choose to have one overall map and then submaps, for example, the chapter level or various levels of submaps. And within your map, you have control over the hierarchical nesting of your topics. Typically, the rules will structure it so that it replicates the structure of the heading levels in your input. But it's all governed by rules, so you can modify that if you want to. It's all within your control. And the last thing on my list is that we do also have access to information that might not be visible in your content flow. So, for example, if you've got index markers in your input, we can automatically convert those to index terms in DITA. If you've got conditional text, we can automatically map that to the appropriate DITA profiling attributes. If you've got variables, for example, or other small pieces of identifiable text, we can convert those to conrefs or keyrefs for you. As well, if you've got content in your master pages or headers or footers, typically there might be some metadata in there that we can capture and map to the appropriate metadata element either in your topic or in your map, according to whatever is appropriate. So those are just a few of the things that we think.
Thanks, Helen. Just before you go into the demo, we had a couple of questions come in whilst you were talking, which I think is worth sort of addressing now before the demonstration, and just as we assign control to you as well, can Migrate convert Word footnotes and endnotes to DITA footnotes?
Yes, and in fact, it will just do that automatically. As long as they are actually footnotes in the Word, it will automatically work in DITA.
Okay, and another question. Can Migrate decide on the topic type based on how the section is titled to identify a task, for example?
So yes, there are various methods that we can use. So one of them is the content of the title. So for example, you may have an authoring convention that will say that your task topics always begin with a gerund. So we can always look for that. They might always say how to. We can look for that. So yes, based on the title is one way. There are other ways. We can also do it pretty accurately based on the content of the topic itself. I say pretty accurately. It's not 100% foolproof, but we can do that. So there are a number of different ways of identifying the topic type, and we'll see some of them when we do the demo.
Thanks, Helen. So let's press on now then, and I think you've got control. So if you want to share your screen, we can then move into the demonstration part.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Les. So now you should be seeing my screen, and what you will see is the equivalent of the page you would see when you would first log into a Migrate portal. And it will have a listing of the documents that you have uploaded. You can see that I've got the same document uploaded here 3 times. That's just as a result of preparing to do a demonstration. Typically, you would not need to upload your document more than once. Once it's uploaded, you can convert it, download the output. If you want to make changes, you can just go in and change the rules, convert it again, download it again, as often as you need to. So you don't need to upload it more than once. You don't need to pay your credits more than once. So what I will do now is I will go briefly through the Migrate workflow, and we'll take a quick look at the document that we're currently converting, and a quick look at the output that we get from it. And then we'll go and look at the rules that we have that are producing this output and see how we can make changes to those rules. So first thing we do, not surprisingly, is we upload a document. So I am working with a FrameMaker chapter here. So it's a .mif file. That's the format that Migrate recognizes. So we upload. So the upload is completed. We can see here, though, that Migrate is still analyzing. That will take it a few more seconds. While it's analyzing, what it's doing is it's creating an intermediate XML format. It's a pretty flat XML format. It only has about half a dozen elements, but it is preserving all kinds of presentational information, kind of things that we recognize when we look at the document that help us know what the structure is intended to be. So font size, font weight, margins, that sort of thing, colors, all of that's preserved. As well, we are keeping track of any markers that are in there, any conditions that are in there. All of those things we're going to be able to use to help us set rules to get a good conversion. It's also counted the number of text characters. It's taken any equations and made a MathML from them, and it's taken any FrameMaker drawings and created SVGs. So it's finished analyzing. It's told us it's going to take us 16 credits to convert. So if I want to see what the analysis shows, I click on the file name. And here it tells me it's counted 16,946 characters. So that's where the 16 credits comes from. It's 1 credit per 1,000 characters. We've got some other statistics. They don't have any impact at all on the credits. It's just for our information. It does tell us we've converted 1 drawing to SVG and 1 equation to MathML. I don't have any warnings, but if I did, they would be here. So because I have no warnings, my next step is pretty simple. I will just go ahead and accept those credit charges. So my red 16 is black now, and I have 16 fewer in my remaining credits pool. Next step, I'm going to give it some rules. So you can see I've got quite a large list of rules here, but that's because this is a demonstration portal. Typically, you would have just the sets of rules that you would need for your own particular project. We have a group of targets here, as you can see, but again, your target would be what you would require for your purposes. I have chosen a DITA 1.2 with a bookmap target. This could be whatever target you want, or you might have more than one target. If you have any specializations, they would be included in that target. I'm going to hit convert. So Migrate is now taking that intermediate XML format that we made, the rules that I put in place, the schema for DITA 1.2, and some configurations to get me a bookmap to my standard specifications, and it's going to give me some DITA output. It's going to take just over a minute to do that, so while it's working on it, I will show you the document that we are converting. This is not a real production type document. This is what I call the kitchen sink. It's got a little bit of everything just so that we can show various things. So it's got, typically different levels of headings. I put in a table here with absolutely no meaning at all, simply to show the column spanning and row spanning and how that's going to work on the output. We have that. Some lists of various types, some different typography. There's our equation. There's our drawing. I put in some conditional text just for fun. So we have a bunch of different things that we see. I've also included some of the challenges that we come across as we prepare to do some conversions. And these are pretty commonplace, in fact. So what we have here is clearly a task topic. We can see that. We can easily tell Migrate how to tell that as well. These are clearly going to be steps. So if I click on them, I will see down here the paragraph style that we have. So we've got numbered one and we've got numbers. So it's going to be easy for me to set a rule saying if you've got a paragraph that style is numbered or numbered one, make it a step. That part's easy. Where it gets a little trickier is when we come to inside the steps. So in step 2, we have click no if this, click yes if that. We need those to be choice elements. And their paragraph style is, for some reason, numbered continued. We go into step 3, we've got some ordered sub-steps here. Same paragraph style. So it's not going to be as straightforward as simply mapping the paragraph style to the elements. We have to make the distinction. Interestingly, too, the person who authored these kindly did not make this a proper list in FrameMaker. They typed in the A.B.C. So we have that to deal with. And of course, we're going to be able to make these into UI controls. Just a couple more things to look at before we go see the converted content. We talked about tables. This note is actually in a table here. It doesn't show up looking much like a table here, but this is a warning inside a table. So we're going to have to get rid of the table markup and make a note of the proper type. I've got some related topics here. Again, they're conditional based on the fact that quite often related topics would only show up in certain types of published output. And if I go down to the end, we'll see that I've got a definition list here that's encoded as a table. So that is something else that we would strip out the table markup and create a definition list. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to look at today. There's a bunch of other things in this document, but we definitely would not have time to see them all. So it has finished converting. It took just under a minute. So I'm going to download that. So where we had one .mif file go in, we have got out all of these files, a DITA file for each DITA topic. We've given them all .DITA extensions, but they could be .xml. We've got a DITAVal file because we do have some conditional text. We go down here, you'll see we have a MathML and we have an SVG. And of course, we have a book map. So I'm going to open up the book map. Here we go. So here's our book map. We've got some front matter and some chapters. Open up the front matter. Proprietary notice, sorry, is what I'm going to open up. So here's our table. And you can see we've got the column spanning and the row spanning appropriately. I'm going to go to our topic where we had all those steps and substeps. Come on, open up. Here we go. Okay, so you can see we have a task, we have steps, we have choices here, we have substeps here, we do have UI controls here. If I just put on the plain text, we can see that.
Helen, you've gone a little faint at this end. I don't know if others might be having the same difficulty, but you're just fading out a little bit, so just be aware of that bit.
I'll try turning up my microphone a little bit.
That sounds better. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So you can see that we have, in fact, eliminated that hard-coded A dot B dot from our substeps. We'll see those when it gets published. So if we scroll down a little bit more, we will see table, our note table. So you can see this is now a note of the appropriate type. And what we've done, we've taken those related links and put them in a relationship table. So they're down here. So if we go to the XML view of the map, there's a relationship table just in our standard configuration. So as a user, I might say to myself, well, I'm pretty happy with that output. But as sometimes happens, requirements change. So let's say you've been happily using your relationship table all this time, but suddenly we've decided we need it instead of a relationship table. We just want to have related links. Putting those things back in as related links, that's, you know, if it's just the two of them, maybe that's not so bad to do by hand. But let's imagine that we have a whole document set where this is the case. We're going to want an easier way. So what I would do at that point, I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to say I need to edit my rules. I'm going to hit the Edit Rules button. We're going to open up the Rules Editor. So what we'll see is a dialog with a representation of our document. It's based on the intermediate XML that we created because that is where we apply the annotations that are going to guide the conversion. We have a listing over here of the rules that are currently in place, and we have a spot down here where we can edit those rules. So quickly to look at what the rules are all about, if we click on this piece of text here, we can see we've highlighted green so we know which is selected. We've got some information about it. Most importantly, probably the fact that the paragraph style is title. We've got the annotation that we know we've already applied. We've got the name of the rule that has applied it. We've also got all these other properties associated with it. So that any of these, if we need to, we can leverage to help us be very specific about the piece of text we're interested in. So what I'm going to do now is click on the applied rule. So that's going to show us the rule that has made this the title of the book. And this is a very straightforward rule. Each rule will have two parts. So one is the test that makes sure we identify the correct piece of text or pieces of text. And the second part is the annotation. This is the instruction to the conversion engine to tell it what to do with this piece of text. So in this case, we've been able just to go by the paragraph style and say the style is typo because that's all we need. And we've told it make it the main title of the book. Now, because this is going to be the main book title, we need to make sure that there's only one. Otherwise, our conversion will break. So with this rule selected, I'm able to see here how many times it has matched. And it has matched exactly one time. If I click here, it takes me where it's matched. So it's matched once and at the top of the document. So that's where I want it. So I'm happy with that rule now. That one is okay. I'm going to go down to some of the other rules. So I've got a rule here to make a step choice. If I click here, it takes me to where it has matched. And here we can see the choices. So how did we get choice? Well, here's our rule. We've looked for the paragraph style. And then to differentiate it from the sub-steps, we've looked at the content to make sure that it does not start with a lowercase letter and a dot. And then we've made it a step choice. The sub-steps, we've done a similar rule. So the test is, again, for the paragraph style. We've again looked for the content, but this time to make sure it does match that pattern. And then we've captured that lowercase letter and a dot so that we can delete it because we won't need it in the DITA. And then we've made it a sub-step. So that's how we've done that. Most interesting right now, we want to go down to this related links where we've made it a relationship table entry. So all I have to do at this point, well, first of all, let's just make sure that we're matching where we want to. These are our related links. So I've looked in this rule for a span where it's an internal link. And again, they're conditional in this case. We've made them online only. So those are our conditions. So that's how we've identified them correctly. Now, all I need to do, since I've got them identified, is to change the instruction. So now it's going to be a related link instead of a relationship table entry. So hit done, hit save. And now that that's done, I will hit convert again. So in about a minute, we will have some new content, some new output, where we'll be able to see those changes. So while that's working, let's just imagine that we've got more than one group of documents. They're similar in many ways, but they differ in some others. So we might want to make a set of rules that is a little bit different from this one. So what I can do is clone the rules that I have and then begin to create a new version from that. So if I go to my rule sets list, I choose the one I'm interested in, I hit clone. I can give it any name I like. So here it is. So now I have a set of rules that is an exact copy of the one I began with. Now I can go ahead and I can apply that set of rules to any of these documents. Just as I did in the first place. I can go ahead and open the rules editor. I can make changes to these rules so that this eventually becomes its own separate rule set without ever actually touching the original one. So I can end up with various rule sets. But this is a demonstration. Imagine that I have, in fact, a lot more documents on there. I don't want to see them all at once. I only want to see the ones I'm interested in at the moment. If I showed them all, you can see that I've got 8 pages worth of documents. That's not useful. So I put them all in a basket. I can create as many baskets as I want according to whatever criteria that I want. I can put documents into and out of baskets. It's just a way to help me see those documents that I'm interested in. And we do have a conversion. So this time it took 1 minute and 11 seconds. Just going to close the files in. Need to extract them all first. That's not even the right one. This is the one. Okay. Okay, so now you can see this is the new book map, and you can see there is no longer a relationship table here. Go back over here, and we can see now we have related links. And here they are in their proper place. So to me, that is one of the great things about Migrate, is how quickly you can make a change like that. That will be propagated throughout the document as you convert it. Takes just a few seconds, really, and you can undo it again if you want to. Just a much easier way than having to go and do it by hand or to have to send it away and be all reconverted. It's just very, very convenient. And you can make the change, as I say, you can undo it if you want to experiment. Everything is there within your control. So that is essentially what I wanted to show. So I'm going to pass back over to you, Les, unless there are any questions that are best answered right now.
Thanks, Helen. I think that there have been a few come through, so we may as well try to pick them up now. And some of them have already been answered, but I'll ask the questions again. Can Migrate work with complex tables?
Yes. Yes.
So I think we've shown that.
Yeah. Migrate.
Yeah, and just to add that, we do an awful lot of work in the semiconductor industry, and the tables get incredibly complex there. Does Migrate work with CAL's tables too?
Okay, to be honest, my understanding of the distinction between an HTML table and a CALS table is not that great, but I'm going to say yes, we do work with CALS tables.
Thank you. And does it work with all versions of Doc and DocX?
It has to be DocX, but any version of Doc that is saved as DocX, we can work with.
Then we had another question. Can we provide an API interface to interact with the Migrate system? I think I can take that one. We can look into it. We don't have a standard API for Migrate, actually, because all of the companies we've dealt with, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, they've surprisingly actually never wanted to integrate it with the CCMS system. They like to keep the separation there. But if we, for example, wanted to, rather than on this screen you see here, rather than say download and want to export to a CCMS system, we could implement that. It would be a little bit of work on our side, but we could do it. So I think that's pretty much it. There's one more question being asked by an attendee. And let me just see, I couldn't read it properly. So many of the rules shown in the example make use of styles in the source documents? Can Migrate work with flat files without styles or tags?
So we can work with, when we do see from time to time Word documents that don't have named styles or very few named styles. They will have some kind of visual clues, though.
For example, it says, the question continues, can we make rules based simply on fonts and font sizes, for example?
Yes, definitely you can. Now, actually, we can get pretty sophisticated with that because we can do, you know, greater or less than, so a font size greater than 12 or font size less than 8, that kind of thing. So yes, you can do quite a lot like that: font size, font style, font space, margins, line height, lots and lots of things. The visual clues that we would use as we look at a document to discern what its structure is, we can capture all of those and set rules accordingly.
And then I've got another question, which is talking about cost. So let me move on now and carry on with the rest of the presentation. Thank you, Helen, for that. If I can get control of this. And okay, so I'll take control now and share my screen. So let me find this, pick up on this point. So I'll come on to costs in a few seconds, but sorry, I haven't got quite to where I want to get to. So let me try again. Okay, so let me just summarize by saying the majority of our customers actually use...
You're not sharing, I don't think.
I'm not sharing, I'm told. So let me just... sorry, bear with me, I'll share my screen. I'll try to share my screen, so hopefully we're getting there now. Okay, sorry about that. So the reason why a lot of organizations go a Migrate route is that it helps to place the authoring teams in control. And this is a really important point. So basically, documentation teams can decide what documents they want to convert on demand and get immediate results. You saw how that can happen. And they can schedule conversion jobs around their own personal production workloads or their own business priorities. So if they just want to do one document this week, they can do that without having to do things in batches. And so you avoid this churn, which involves time and costs, going back and forth with conversion partners. When you can tweak the rules, as you saw, using the rules editor, you can do things really quite quickly. And as a consequence, you do actually reduce the amount of pre-conversion prep or post-conversion cleanup that needs to be otherwise done. So it's a really important point. It is pay-as-you-use, so it's pretty low cost, and it's fully supported. So as we said before, we can sit in the background, help out, and dip into the portal and help out with particular documents that might be giving problems if needs be. Now, the way in which we engage with clients is typically sort of the following process. We would ask you typically to just upload a sample document to our website, stilo.com/migrate. We analyze and convert document free of charge. We apply some basic rules which we think make sense in a DITA world. We jointly review the results with you in a WebEx, and then actually we provide you with the results free of charge, which you can then use for your testing and your own evaluation purposes. And following on from that, we can then more closely agree the configuration and tailoring requirements that you might have. And we would do that by way of another WebEx session and just better understand the configuration of rules that you might need. It doesn't have to be actually set in stone because of the fact we can always change pretty quickly as we go through, as you saw before using the rules editor. But the way in which this normally works is that there's a couple of days of setup for the portal configuration and setup, and then we do sort of provide user training. We hand over a portal to you, provide a WebEx session where you have some training using the rules editor, and then we provide ongoing support from Stilo. But if you didn't want any of that and you just wanted to, what I would say, provide, have an over-the-wall service for whatever reason might best suit your business, then we can operate the portal on your behalf, and we convert it all, and we curate the results with you as well, and we refine the rules as necessary. But that's a valid alternative, which we're actually sort of doing quite regularly with customers or with partners, for that matter. And just, I think, by way of showing some metrics, we've shown this previously in presentations. It's always useful to maybe reflect upon it. One of our customers was IBM Sterling Commerce. They were already using an outsourced conversion organization, and they were converting 200 FrameMaker books, a couple of 20,000 pages to DITA. And we did this with them over a 6-week period, but they collected metrics on the before and after, if you like. And beforehand, it was taking them 24 hours per book to do the prep, 32 hours for the actual conversion, and 16 in cleanup. They did a little bit of in-house scripting themselves as well for some of the smaller jobs they had. It was taking an average 40 hours per book. And then they used Stilo and Migrate, and they'd still done the pre-conversion prep by this stage, but it only took a couple of hours per book. So to convert, there was no cleanup after that of any significance. So this was a massive saving. And as a result of this exercise, actually, Migrate was essentially recommended throughout IBM. There's other sort of stories we can call upon, many actually, but this was one example we did with Extreme Networks. Smaller conversion job, FrameMaker to DITA, 1,000 pages, a couple of guides. They were having real problems with their existing supplier, and they couldn't give up the files for several weeks during the ongoing product development process. They're getting very, very frustrated with what they were doing, and it was good. They basically engaged with us. We pushed some of these documents through Migrate, and we returned them to them within a couple of days. There was a couple of tweaks that we had to run through the system again, and then it was all finished and worked well. It was quite a revelation to them, and I think it sort of vividly or graphically sort of highlights the difference between a good conversion and a bad conversion, and the difficulties you can get into. And interestingly, Extreme then subsequently went on to actually implement their own portal as well. So they have a mix of using their own portal, sometimes giving us jobs to do, and that works fine, and that's down to them. So there are different approaches we can take. Pricing guidelines are as follows. Typically, when we set up a portal for our customers, there's a couple of days of setup, rules configuration involved. There's potentially portal tailoring. If you have specializations, then that would need to be looked at, and then we would essentially provide a quote based around that. But a lot of our customers have no specializations at all. Some might have some specializations where there's 1 or 2 days of tailoring involved. Others might have some longer, I suppose, more complex specializations that need to be implemented. But generally speaking, a couple of days is about it, and 20 days might be the maximum that we encounter typically, but that's where the tailoring comes in. And then conversion credits are charged at $3.20 each, so each credit converts about 1,000 characters, or it does convert 1,000 characters, which equates to maybe a page in FrameMaker, that sort of thing, or Word. And you purchase individual subscriptions, so $800 per annum, but that's for basically one named and supported and trained user. You can have as many unsupported users as you like, free of charge, and that's the way that works. And then we provide also sort of over-the-wall services I mentioned earlier, and that would be upon request, and we would be charging for our own labor in that. So that's typically it. I think that we've got, before going on and wrapping up at the end, I just wondered if there are any more questions that might have come in that need to be answered. I'm looking over my shoulder as I'm saying this. I'm told not. So I'll just continue at this point to say that you can see us at some upcoming events in July, October at Balasage, and in the States at SDL, in California with the SDL Connect user group, and then CMS to the Europe in Berlin in October, and then Labicon in November in Portland. So otherwise, please feel free to contact us at contact@stilo.com, and I'd appreciate it very much if you could just take a couple of minutes at the end of the session to complete the survey. And if you want to arrange any follow-up sessions or provide us with a sample of your own documents to convert and discuss, we'd be more than happy to hear from you. So thanks for attending today. We're right at we have a couple more minutes left, but we're essentially sort of with no more questions to ask at this point. So thank you once again for your time, and I hope you found the session useful. Thank you very much.